Welcome back to Ribbon Candy Hooking. I'm Deanna, and I'm Pitterpat. She's never in the videos, but she's a good girl. And she right here. I am sitting here frantically getting my second Magpie project done. I had a vision that for an article I wanted to put into the upcoming issue of Magpie Times, Midsummer Magic. And I'm going to show you how this project is starting. I used to love Victorian stuff, and I collected a lot of Victorian frames in my life. And this is one of them. It's about maybe 13 inches tall. I thought it was, oh, look at that picture. What a pretty picture. I thought it was a good frame for what I'm doing, but it turns out I'm going to create a series of crocheted flowers. I've already done them, and now I'm assembling them together. And I want to create something that looks like, you know, those Victorian hair or mourning wreaths, right, that would sort of memorialize someone who had passed. Something like that, but with colorful, variegated sock yarn, all different materials, all different sort of textures and twists, and not quite so dark or sort of depressing sentiment, much more cheerful looking to fit the Midsummer Magic theme. Oh my gosh, look at her. So I had this frame, which is a very good one, but I think I might in the end defer to this frame, which is way, way, way bigger. Same thing, oval. Can't even hold it in this way. Now I'm starting to think, is that frame too big? This one is a fraction of it. I'm going to start working on my project and show you how I am kind of resolving the crocheted flowers as I go. I'll show you making one. Each one is made differently. It's their seat. This is a seat of the pants project, which I really love. You can use your last bits of yarn, right? It doesn't have to be all matching and color coordinated like I'm trying to do for this project, but this is a magazine project. If I were doing it with more of a thrift vibe to it, I would be using all of my leftover stuff. And then it would be a question of smaller, bigger, I don't know. I still haven't decided, but let's get going with making a flower, right? And in the magazine, I'll tell you, I made each one differently. There's not like a pattern to it, but I'll show you the general feel for what I'm trying to do. And then I'll show you putting a flower together, because you end up with a bunch of things like this, coils, and then you're going to want to, you know, get them into a flower shape, tack them, and mount them onto backing fabric inside the frame. They really do look like little Victorian flowers, don't they? And all the different colors, so pretty. So let's get started. Okay, so let's do some flowers. Now, again, all of these flowers are going to be done differently. I don't have like a formula in my head. I just want them to be long and ruffly so I can fold them into shapes, tack a few stitches in, and attach them to backing so that they look like a flower. What I want is for them to look ruffled. So I've got my dish right here. This really is just a fun thing to work on. Let me get you as close as I can. You know, there's lots of projects that are just silly projects, but lots of fun, mind-numbingly, you know, relaxing, particularly when you don't have to deal with a formula. I've got a little bit of yarn here. Let's see if I've got problem number 1 is my crepey skin. That's obvious. Problem number 2, there we go. So I'm just going to get this. This is a little bit I have left over. It's hard to say how much I'm going to use. I'm just going to wind this into a ball with my hand so that we can work with this a little more easily. But it's just a little scrap I have left over of sock weight yarn. So quite thin yarn, not fingering yarn. This is more sock, bordering on DK, a little bit thicker. All right, so I got myself wound into a little bit of a ball here. I'm just going to start the way I always start, except I'm going to give myself a longer tail, because I'm probably going to want to have a longer tail, and you can always add more later. But when I form this into like a little rosette kind of a thing, I'm going to want my tails to tack it into place. You know what I mean? If you forget to do the tails, then you just add a piece of string later, so it's not a big deal. But I'm going to add a tail of maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 inches. And then I'm going to start crocheting. So I just did like the little noose loop that starts with crochet projects. If you haven't crocheted yet, you probably want to go to a crochet video first. I've done crochet videos for sure. Lots of people have. So this part is going to go too fast if you've never crocheted. I started my loop like this. Absolutely try it if you want to give it a shot. The question will be, how many chains am I going to make to get started? And for me, it's been different from flower to flower. So let's see. Let's do, that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't want endless. I don't need 7, 8, 9, 10. Sorry, I don't need all the flowers to be huge. So most of my flowers range from about 15 to 25 loops. I already lost track there, but let's do 10 more. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Nah, I'm going to do 5 more. So I'm not even keeping track, right? I'm just keeping the loops going. I'm going to stop with the chain like that. It's not super long. It's about, I would say, 6 inches. But you'll see it gets bigger and it gets ruffly. I'll do a couple more, right? Why not? I'll do 3 more. There we go. So the next thing I'm going to do is I want to come to the next row. I've got the chain. I want to start working the row up here, like right on top of the chain. So I'm going to kind of, and again, this goes back to conversations about beginner crochet. I'm going to want to go up and loop this way into the row I've already done. So again, this is the beginner stuff, but just to show you where my head is at while I'm putting this together, I'll probably do like a double crochet idea and wrap over. I'm going to skip a couple so it's not all bunchy. Should I go to this one? Should I go to this one? Should I go to this one? It ain't that kind of project, right? We're not that persnickety. I'm just going to come into one of the loops that's right there and finish a double crochet in that first spot. The thing about making the flower and the point of this video, because there's no math to it, I have 1 double crochet in that first loop. I'm going to add 2 more into the same loop. So I'm doing 2 more double crochets into the same loop. That makes 3. Oops, I accidentally went to the next loop. No problem. I'll add 2 more in here. This is stuff that you are never going to know. And the reason you're never going to know whether I screwed up and put 2 or 1 in the first loop or the second loop is because it looks like this when you're done. And then it just becomes a question of, and we'll do this later, doing this, tacking it and attaching it. So you can see, can you tell when you see a flower like this whether I missed a stitch in the first loop? Obviously not, right? It's not that kind of a thing. So what I'm going to do, I just create my own idea. I did 3 stitches in that first loop. I'm going to go 3 into the next loop, and I'm just going to make the point that while it looks semi-normal right now, it ceases to be normal very quickly because you're adding so much to this one little chain that it begins to ruffle up. It's starting on the second link. You see it's already starting to curl. Let's do 3 into the next stitch. And again, this is not a formula. If you got up and went to the bathroom or got some food just now and you're looking at your thing going, shoot, did I do 2 or 3? It just doesn't matter. Just put quite a few stitches into the chain and you're going to immediately notice that it's going to start to ruffle up. And that's a good thing because you want it to be a little bit ruffly. I'm going into the next chain. I'm putting 3 in there. Can you put 4 into one and 1 into the next or skip the next one? Absolutely. You just want to end up with a nice little bit of ruffle that you can twist into something that's like a rose shape so that it looks like a little fake flower, a little artificial flower. So I'm just adding bulk. I'm adding stitches. I'm overwhelming that little original chain with lots of stitches. And you can see sooner rather than later, the thing starts to curl up in your hand and make a little corkscrew. It's going to do more and more of that. Now, this is something that you can do for every flower. If you want to, you just keep adding extra stitches, 2 stitches, 3 stitches, 4 stitches into every link from the original chain. You can keep doing this if you want, or you can do other crazy stuff. In some of the flowers, I started doing other crazy stuff. So for example, just making up shapes. For example, I might do, something like this. I'm just going to chain up. I'm going to chain 4 up, right? And then I've got kind of a bit of a mutation. I've got this bit hanging up off the chain. I'll do 1 more. And maybe I want to come back here and just tack it into place, right? And it made like a little nubbin, like a little dot on top of that one piece, right? If I make a bunch of those, they're going to look like little stamen. I don't know if stamen is plural or not, but you know the little prickly things that stick out of flowers that the bees and the insects want to eat from, right? Those little pokey things. Looks like a little stamen. So it might be that I want to do a few of those. It might be that I want to do none of those. It might be that I want to do big other lace connections. I'll show you some bridges that I might want to make out of lace. You can see right here I pulled a little bit on this piece here. Am I going to unravel anything that I'm doing with this flower? No, definitely not. It's just not that kind of a project. I'm going to add 3 more, then I might want to add another little stamen. But the idea is that you're just adding stitches. I would stick with double crochet and work high, because there's no reason to have a low chain. It's going to make a very low flower, unless you have a different vision for what the shape of your flower is. See, I did another one of those, and I'm going to connect it to the same stitch here. Unless you have a vision for flowers that are a different shape, or you're trying to emulate a specific flower, just putting little details like that looks like Shrek right now. But you see, if I have a bunch of them and they're all wound together, it's going to give a little different height, right, to these petals. This flower is subsequently going to look a little bit different than the other flowers around it. This is a fairly small flower, and I like the way it's looking. It's curling up nice. I like the little stamen things that I added on top. Some of them could just be 4, 5, 6 stitches connected, right, to make this little dit dot, right? I'm calling that a stamen. Some of them could be much taller, right, much more exaggerated and dramatic. But these are certainly improvisational flowers, right? There's nothing really tricky going on here. I'm just fooling around, creating this curly corkscrew ruffle thing. And the next step is going to be, I'm going to twist them around, stabilize them, create them, you know, tack them into flower shapes, and then I'm going to be looking at attaching them to a piece of wool that I cut to fit inside the frame. That's stamen number 3. So just fooling around for a couple of minutes has resulted in a piece that looks like this. I'm going to keep going off camera, but you can see it's going to twist up into a real pretty flower. You'll see. I'll show you in a minute. All right, so I finished up with this little guy. I'm going to leave a little bit of a tail like this too, similar kind of length. I was afraid I was going to run out, but this is a pretty small flower. This is one of my smaller ones. So when I finish it off, again, this is like all just basic stuff. I'm not an advanced crocheter. I've got the little tails there, right? Now, I could have gone up another height. I could have just turned it again and gone back another row. But I'm just doing this quick because I actually have plenty of flowers. I'm going to grab for my repair needles. You could do tapestry needles, repair needles, whatever. It doesn't matter. The reason I'm going for this one is because it's not sharp, right? I don't need any more injuries. So I'm going to put away the crochet hook. I'm going to figure out how I want this to go. So I kind of fool with it and pin it in my hand. And each one is going to be different colors, different height, different kinds of little sort of blooms. I'm going to pin this in place like this. Right, it's just for fun. It's going to be squeezed in amongst all of the others. I'm just going to pin it like this. These are sharp. Yeah, and I'm gonna hook up the tails to the needle and try to kind of weave the tails through in a way that it catches, and I end up with a little rosette. Let's see. Now this is hard to explain, right? Because each one is different. But I've got that pin in place, so I have a little bit of flexibility here. I want that last little stamen to show. It's fiddly, but at the end of the day, you're just making it the way that you want this flower to be. And obviously, once I tack it into place, I can change my mind. And I'm just hiding some little stitches behind. I might not even need that second tail. Let's see. This is all just improv, because this is all going to be attached to my backing fabric, which I think is going to be a pretty light blue color. At least I found it sitting out, and I don't know what it was there for, so it seemed like kismet that it would be sitting there waiting for a project. Piece of wool in search of a project. That hardly ever happens at this house. So this flower looks like this. Now, because it's a small flower, and you see I haven't even touched the second tail yet, but it's totally in place, just putting a couple stitches in it. I could just get it ready to mount. I might want it more like this, and if that's the case, I'm going to want to, and by the way, since I was already into this one, why don't I'm always reluctant to cut the tail. It's just one of those things. I'm just going to tie this one off so that the tail's done and, well, at least secure. I might leave it like that because I might use that to sew it onto the wool. I've got the second longer tail, and I'm thinking if I want it to be stand up a bit more, then I need to make it cup a little bit more underneath. So I'm going to thread this one up too. There isn't, I hope you're getting the impression there's no right way to do this. This is just for fun, and I'm just fooling around, doing crafty rafties with flowers. I'm figuring it out as I go. I'm figuring out, you know, it's one of these classic, what am I trying to do? Will I like it? Well, I'll know when I see it whether I like it or not. And if I don't like it, I'm going to keep going. So it's very seat of the pants kind of a project, like most of my projects. This is just yet another project that is not rug hooking that you can do with your leftover fabric. I'm kind of, you can see, fooling with it here and giving it some shape so that I can catch it and shape it as I go. You could sit and do this for a long time, just catching threads and changing the shape of your flower, changing the way that it's sitting. You could do this indefinitely. It just becomes a question of, number one, how OCD are you? And number two, does it look good already? Because remember, this is going to be mounted into that one of the oval frames, probably the larger one. It's going to be mounted with all the other flowers. It's just one of the chorus. It's not, this is not like the main character. There is no main character. So I'm going to fool with my flowers and look at them until I feel like, okay, I like the way that sits. I'm liking the way that sits now. It's a little bit curly in the front. I might fool with it for another minute, but you can see it's not going to fall apart. It's all attached. It's ready to be attached to the base. All of my flowers were made in this very haphazard style. You kind of design them as you go. But the project is really about the sum of all of the flowers, right? It's a wreath, right? So it's like round, and they're all of equal importance, even though they're different sizes, different colors, different weights of yarn. It's like it's King Arthur and the Round Table, right? Nobody's more important than anybody else. They're all different, they're all pretty, and together they make the whole story. So I don't agonize individually from one flower to the next. I just make as many flowers as I want until I think I have enough to put into that flower box. Let's see what's next. All right, so this is another little guy who I'm happy with. Nice colors. You know, it's a bit agonizing because it's like, you know, you don't want to lose any of the pretty colors on the back. That's just the nature of crafts, isn't it? The front looks great, but I was trying so hard to not lose any of this like rich ruffly stuff in the back, but it's just not the way it works. I have it tied up same way here, and the front looks great too, so I have to be at peace with that. So I just grab another one. I've got this one here. This is a taller one. You can see I've done more rows on this one. Going up from the chain, I did 2 rows. So this one is extra ruffly. And it's just the same thing. It's no rhyme or reason. You just kind of feel your way, thread it up, and then I get a feel for how I want it to sit. And then I just start tacking it. And I could put my pin in it again. I might put my pin in it again. Let's see. My MO is to just kind of hold it in my hand gingerly and say, yeah, that's good. I'll take that. And yep, I sometimes pin it, sometimes don't. I can see he's sticking up over there. And then you can pin. You can absolutely pin. I'm so overconfident with stuff that's not necessarily a good thing that I tend to not pin and stuff unless I'm doing a video like this. I just catch some of the back of it, and that means the front is like popping over, right? But we'll figure that out in a second. It's already holding itself together, and I go at it a few ways like this, just try to catch it. I think it already is. It's already together. So then it just becomes a question of how do I want to fan it out? Ooh, that's pretty. Ooh, that's very pretty, isn't it? So then I just try to again, tack it. I don't want to be super repetitive, but it's worth maybe seeing a couple times doing the same thing, because it's not like we've all been assembling crochet flowers for all of our lives. Maybe you have. There's something so pretty about artificial flowers, you know, and that's what brought me to this project. Is I thought, I do love the Victorian stuff, and I do have a few examples of small pieces of hair art and shell art. I used to have more, and I kind of went off of it, as you do, you know, with lots of collections and not a lot of extra money sitting around. So I think I sold some bits and pieces I had at one point. But I love the idea of it, and I way prefer the idea of using the sock yarn for it than using human hair. Nothing wrong with that. I think that's quite beautiful, but a little bit maudlin, you know what I mean? So I'm in the back of the flower here, and I have to say, it with just a couple of stitches, it already is sitting really well. I came unthreaded there, but I might, yeah, I think I'm just going to tie it up like this because I feel like that's a pretty good looking flower. Maybe I'll fool with it one more time. Yeah, one more little stitch. It's just a question of how you want your petals to sit. They're not going to be standing independently of each other. They're going to be, you know, ruffling around the wreath. So it's ruffling around. Shouldn't that be a nursery rhyme or a Christmas song, ruffling around the wreath? If you can say it, you can sing it. So, yeah, just making sure that the center is shored up and together. And if I tie these two strings together, will I like it like that? It does have a little bit of a carnation feel, doesn't it? That's real pretty. I think I'm going to end it there. You know, I can always go back later when I have my dish of flowers. I can always go back later and say to myself, you know, I want this one to stand up more this way, or I want this part to be more open. But for this moment, I like him the way he is there, and I'll put him into place, you know, when I get the whole wreath going. So just a rinse and repeat. This whole dish needs to be done this way, just with one little needle and the tails, and yeah, just have some fun time assembling all this. All right, one more little technique I've got going here. This is such a pretty one. I want as much showing of the colors as I can. You know, it's like a super pretty one. So I've got my end here, and I'm doing this one a little bit differently. You see how this is the chain on the bottom here? With this one, I want to kind of just wrap as I go and create an all kind of pucker top. So let me show you what I mean. This is the bottom. I'm going to kind of wrap in circles as I go. This yarn is so pretty and mushy. I'm going to do something like this. You see what I mean? And then I'm going to catch, and I'm basically keeping the ruffle coiled up, right? I'm coiling like a spiral around one bud so that all of the ruffle remains on top. And the others I kind of put together like a handful of you know, curls. This one I'm wrapping it all around like this. You see what I mean? And it's going to have more, I'll show you when I get to the end, it's going to have a more formula kind of a look to it. It won't be as spontaneous a flower, but it's going to be really pretty. So I'm just catching the chain part as I spiral around. It gets fluffy. See, that's what the front is looking like. It gets fluffy enough. I think I need to catch the center again. The ruffle is getting so big that the center is getting away from me. So let me catch the center. Yep. And I'm going to keep spiraling it like this, you see. I'll tack it a bit more. But that's another way to do it. You see, there was a difference between taking something like this, tacking it, and putting it together like this. It's going to look great, but this is just a different look. This is a more formula-looking flower. There we go. So he's a little bit different. He spirals like this. You see what I mean? So there's more height. Now, I probably won't, I love this, and he's more flat in the back. I love this, but I probably won't do them all that way, just so they're all a little bit different. But you decide what you like. This looks great three-dimensional. This would also make a great pin. But you see all the flat bits are here, and the other bits are standing up here. So I'm going to do them all here as I watch Murder, She Wrote. Oh, yeah. And then I'll assemble them into the frame and see what we've got. Okay, so next piece of insanity, I have my, let me show you here. I have my flowers, right? I did a bunch of flowers. I feel like it's a cooking show. I don't know if I have enough, but let's see how it goes. These are all kind of stitched up differently, some with this method, like a carnation and kind of tacking it through, and some with more formulaic, where all the stitches are flat on the back and it kind of rises up like that. This is maybe a smaller example of the same. You see what I mean? So I got all my flowers done there. I have the frame. I'm happy with this frame. And, you know, I think I'm going to have to, just brought you a little higher, I have to test a couple of things, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the flowers around the edges, and I have an idea for a quote. I wrote down a couple of quotes that I like that went somewhere, but I'm going to find my quotes. I need to be sure they fit in here. So my husband cut out the cardboard. This is the frame. This is exactly the right size, the cardboard. And I'm going to put the flowers around the edges. And because it has a quote, thank you, Barbara, for this thought, I was going to put it portrait orientation, top to bottom, but I'm going to put it side to side so that the words read better. So I need to practice my words. So I'm looking to put text in the center. And I have a bunch of quotes that I was experimenting with because the theme is Midsummer Magic. But the one that I think I'm going to use is by Anais Nin, the author. And the whole quote goes like this: I'm restless. Things are calling me away. My hair is being pulled by the stars again. I love that quote. So I want to use it, but that's a long quote. So I'm going to experiment with how to get the text in there. I'm going to assume that the flowers are going to populate this whole outer border, at least. So that leaves me with less. And now I just have to fool around with the lettering, right? And this is something I need to figure out, and I need to transfer onto my wool. But let's, first things first. So this piece of a cardboard, the other side is black, unfortunately, so I've got to deal with the lines. You make things work, right? We're thrifty people. So I have to think about whether I want to put, I'm restless, things are calling me away. The part I really want is my hair is being pulled by the stars again. So I'm debating about whether I should put, I'm restless, ... It's cut the middle line. My hair is being pulled by the stars again. I'm tempted to just put my hair is being pulled by the stars again. So what I typically do when I have a quote like this that I want to use is I count the letters, right? Because I'm trying to fit it into the space. It's going to go like a haiku, like small, larger, larger, small. So I count the letters and I count the spaces. So 1, 2, 3, space 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 24. I'm not going to keep you with me while I do this boring part. So it's a total of 41 characters, including spaces. So I need to think about that, and I need to think about whether I want to write Anais Nin at the bottom as well. So I'm going to work this out in my head. I'm going to break it down mathematically and tell you how I'm thinking it's going to fit in that space. All right, so I put I'm restless here just in case I choose to go with that. And I realized that if I cut the text in half with the 41, it cuts in the middle of the word pulled. So I need to make a decision about whether I want, it's also about beauty and poetry, right? Because if I do I'm restless, my hair is being, and then the next line, pulled by the stars again, it doesn't have as good of a flow as I'm restless, my hair is being pulled by the stars again. That sounds better, the way that reads. And when you think about it, people who approach the piece and look at whatever line you chose, you could use this one or any line, any text or no text. Chances are, even if you know the quote, when you read it, you're not expecting that line, right? Even if it's familiar after you read it, you're not expecting it. So you want to present text always in a way that people get it the first time. They get the best chance of appreciating the emphasis, where the emphasis goes. So I'm restless. I'm going to try to do my hair is being pulled, and I'm trying to do it in cursive. Let's see, my hair is, it might work actually, being, it's going to work, pulled. So I might even have more room by the stars again. This isn't the way the text is going to look. It's just the way that, I'm just practicing where I'm going to do my break-offs. So then it becomes a question of, that didn't take up as much room as I thought. I know it's confusing to look at, but this is just the figuring part. I could move it all down a little bit. I'm happy with the way that it looks. I'm now debating, should I put I'm restless, things are calling me away, because that's like a whole other big sentence. Then I would have to change the scale of the font. And I also want to think about all these flowers being around the edges and how there's going to be a bit of sight confusion with, ooh, three-dimensional flowers, brrr, and then you notice the words and you want to read the words. So I think I'll stick with this text, and then it's a question of if I want to do something like this at the end and attribute it, maybe in a smaller. I think I do want to do that. So I think we're going to go with I'm restless, my hair is being pulled by the stars again, Anis Nin. So I think we will. I think that's good. I needed to know how this was going to, sorry, I love to pound stuff when I'm thinking. I wanted to know how this was going to work out. I was also thinking about the quote, FYI, go out and paint the stars. That's a Van Gogh quote. Allen Ginsberg, follow your inner moonlight. Right? There's lots of beautiful quotes about summer, moonlight, magic, stardust, all of that stuff. I was listening to the Nat King Cole song, Stardust. Been listening to lots of sources. I'm going to go with this. And I guess the postman's here. Now, the next things I'm thinking about are transfer. So I'm not a big fan of freehand. It might be that I have to freehand because this is the wool that I'm going to use as the background, right? So it's like a bit of a mottled, a little bit of, this looks to me like it's maybe Wedgwood or Robin's Egg blue with a little bit of the tobacco color, the Dharma color, shut up buttons in the background. So the next thing I need to do is, I'm going to cut this to fit exactly. And I'm going to do that really carefully. And again, I'm going to be hooking into the wool. Did you know that you can hook into wool? Like this is rug hooking wool. You can hook into wool if you can get your needle into it, right? And when I have it stretched, I can, right? So this, and I can hook. I just want to say this again because I don't think everyone knows. You can hook into wool. Now, I wouldn't want to hook a whole piece into wool. I wouldn't because it's a bit of a pull, no puns intended. You need a really small head. You need a hook with a really small head like this little Irish hook because something big isn't going through the wool, right? You can put it through. It's not going to rip. It's going to come out great. You don't want to do a lot of pulling out when you're hooking into wool because you can damage the wool. And if this is your backing fabric, you don't want damage. You want to be really careful. So it will work. The question is just going to be, as it always is, how am I going to transfer this text onto this backing fabric? And I think what I'm going to try to do is trace it with a piece of tracing paper. Let's do this together. All right, so I've got the iron plugged in, and let's see. I don't know that it's going to work transferring with the sulky pen onto the wool, but let's see if it might work. If it doesn't work, I have two other options in my head. I could transfer it with fiber tape. I don't really want to do that, but I might do that. So there's three options. There's four options. This might work, option number one, this sulky permanent iron-on transfer pen, right? It's a transfer pen. Let me get rid of this dog. The flipping postman is here, and he's going to drive us nuts. Whew. Do you live these days, or do you remember these days? I just got to know. So your choices here for transferring text. The sulky iron-on transfer pen, choice number one. Choice number two, fiber tape, right? And the fiber tape is right here. I'm always using the fiber tape, right? I transfer other stuff with the fiber tape, and I have videos on that. That's choice number two. Choice number three, possibly, depends on the color, chalk, right? Like Taylor's chalk from the store. It's like either the little triangles or the pencils. It comes in all different colors. You would have to freehand it with chalk. Choice number four, straight up freehanding, right? Just freehanding as you doodle with your needle right into it, right? No cues. So I wouldn't go for that. Some people do, and their work ends up looking really funky and instinctive, right? Energized or crappy, right? It really depends on how well it goes. So let's see if I'm going to be able to get all of this on. I'm going to spread it out a little bit more, and I also want to be sure, I forgot about this part, I usually do things closer to number 4 where I'm not really overly careful. I want to be sure that my lines are pretty spread out. So for example, this is going to be a baseline, and oh good, that's an orange pencil. That's just what we need. All right, this is going to be a baseline. And I love using my, this up here a little more. I love using my quilter's ruler because, you know, having a see-through ruler like this with all of the lines really helps with everything that I do. Everything. Not just text. All right, so let's get this a little bit better. And if these two are spaced that far apart, okay, then we want to do another, want to space them pretty equidistant with the exception of the Anise Nin, right? That could be a little bit further down. This is close enough, right? I work in the style of close enough. And then down here, I have her. Make sure it's still even. And now I can use my lines as a guide. If you're wondering how, you know, if you're not a person who's historically done a ton of crafts and you're wondering how do you figure this stuff out? Do you take classes in figuring stuff out? No, figuring stuff out, it goes way back, right? You just have to figure stuff out. I cut out cardboard with my husband, cut out cardboard with scissors, right? Like we had a refrigerator box or something, and now I've got a piece of paper and I'm drawing lines. This is how you do everything, right? And you transfer it to the bigger picture. In life, this is how you do everything. You have to figure everything out. The one thing I want to do is keep it centered. You see how my letters stop here and here? So that part is something I don't want to screw up. I'm going to try to recreate my text. I'm not sure I like that I, but let's see. Okay, so it was I'm restless, period, right? And then let me be careful about here. And I'm going to be careful about keeping it on the lines because can you see how hair is under the line? Right, so I didn't draw it the first time super well. So I kind of move my guide as I go. That's why the guide is there. Still want to be careful about the edge hair. So far so good, and I'm going to center, I'm shifting the page because I want to center this text. And you want to think about when you're doing stuff in cursive, like this tail's coming below the line, this tail's going above the line. That can look so pretty and artistic if you do it the right way, right? You don't want to have them like touching each other or too close. You want to be thoughtful about that because that can really add to your own personal style of text. If you can get your cursive looking and dancing together in a way that's really creative, right? So, by the if you don't like your own handwriting, you can always type something in a Word doc and choose, oh, I screwed that up, and choose which font you want it. So I'll do that right when I trace it. And then I'm going to get this squared, and I might want that a little bit over to the edge, but not lost in flowers. So I'll do like that. Yep, I like that. So I think that's going to work good. Now, the thing I want to think about is I'm going to be hooking it, not punching it, right? So when if I was punching it, I would trace it just like this because I'm going to see if it'll work with the transfer pen. But the transfer pen is going to transfer, if I trace it like this, it's going to transfer like that, and that's reversed. I don't want that unless I'm punching. If I'm hooking, I want the letters to be facing me. So I'm going to have to trace with my transfer pen on the back, right? So that's my next move. That's almost my next move. This is another fiddly part because I'm going to be cutting the piece out, and I want this to be centered right here. And this is tricky. I'm going to give myself a little wiggle room. I want it to be, I'm looking at where the ring is, right? And I'm going to try to move this without moving my hand. Does that have potential for disaster? Absolutely. You know what? I first should trace the letters, shouldn't I? I'm going to trace the letters, and then I'm going to come back to you. And by the way, I'm just tracing with my sulky pen.
shake it up a little bit, give it a few, not on this page because it'll transfer, give it a few dip dots, get it activated, and it's going to change my handwriting a little bit, but so is hooking it. So I'm going to do this off camera and then I'll show you the next thing. Yikes. I'll tell you what, you need every brain cell you've got to trace something backwards. Unless you are like a genius, ambidextrous type person, it is super hard to concentrate on backwards text. So I probably screwed it up several times. Speaking of screwing stuff up, I mean, I'm the queen of screwing stuff up. So let's see if I can center this, and I'm going to want it facing down, centered here. No, let me put it back where the text was, right? Because I want every guide I can have. See if it's inside my oval. It's worth thinking through because wool is not cheap, right? I can always use the strips in a different way to hook later. That's it. Okay. So I'm going to square it a little bit and move it out away from the corner to give me a little bit extra room. I've had my iron on. Let's see if this works. I don't know that this will work, but this is my first choice of ways of transferring because I would prefer to have this single line than chalk all over the place. So far not working. It might be a not working thing. I have not done transfer pen onto wool before. Let's give it another minute because you never know. The pen was certainly in the ink, like it wasn't out of ink, but it might not want to do this. And that's going to be a big, dang it. That would have been so good. Give it a few. Oh, you know what? Oh my God, I was ironing it the wrong way. What is wrong with me? Hi, I'm Deanna. Nice to meet you. I screw everything up. I always tell you that. Okay, so there's still a chance. There's still a chance. But let's do this again. Oh my God. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm so used to using the transfer pen with mini punch. And then I flip it over because I reverse. I am so sorry. What a stooge arena. Okay, so let's do this again. I'm kind of relieved, actually, because I'm really hoping this works. All right, center it up again. I'm not editing that because I think you all already know what I'm like. All right, so let's hold it like this. Let's do this again. Come on, Lord. Come on. And let's see how the lines are a little bit tipped, so I'm going to pull it up this way a little bit. Okay, now I'm nervous because it's kind of the do or die, isn't it? All right, let's see. Whew. All right, let's go. Scary. Still not working. Oh, man. Fingers crossed. Dang it. Still not working. All right. It's working a little bit. I don't think it's working enough to have success. I might just be ruining the wool, you know what I mean? Let's see. I'm going to put you on hold for a second while I hit this. I'm just giving it another minute while I keep hoping. You know, I'm thinking about all of those old Aunt Lydia patterns and all of the like 1980s era mini punch stuff. You know, it's all on transfer paper. Remember in the 70s, 80s, all those big volumes of motifs that were on transfer paper that you could, you know, for patches on your denim jacket or on your jeans or whatever. All of those were transfer paper, right? So they had some form of transfer ink. I guess the good news is it's not, well, it's not good enough, so that's not good. I can see it faintly. I was going to say, I guess the good news is I ironed this piece of cloth really well. So let's look. Let me unplug the iron before I forget. We remembered at 11:45 last night that the glue gun was still plugged in. That was Jocelyn's work. So let's get rid of this iron. That was an epic fail. Now let's see. What's our next idea? So I can see it a little bit. Let's see. Oh God, I just ripped the paper in half. That was an accident. That was not rage. All right. I'm going to get out. Oh, it's a tough call. I'm going to get out my pen. I'm going to get as much of it in place as I can with a really fine pen. Not the sulky, obviously that's transfer ink. I'm going to get my Sharpie, the super, super, super fine. I do not want it to bleed. So I'm going super gingerly here. Let me find my pen. Okay, this is the Sharpie Ultra Fine. I'm just seeing, I do not want it to bleed, right? So I'm going so gingerly. I can't breathe while I do this. Isn't that crazy? I can copy as much as I can. If you're wondering, what if she used a different color wool? Well, that would help. But the thing is, I wanted this color. So it is what it is. I have specific challenges that are a product of wanting to use this color and this material, right? If I was using a different material and a different color, we would have different challenges. The thing is to find a way and the confidence to be able to make it work, whatever you got going. So I'm going to continue to try to trace the parts that I can see, and then I'm going to regroup. Incredibly, I've gotten pretty far just concentrating on it. I'm only missing my, and then the HA, and then the word by. So I've gotten this far. I think I'm going to keep going with this. Why didn't I want to go to chalk? Because it's messy, and I think I'd also have a problem with visibility, number one. Why didn't I want to go to fiber tape? Well, because then in the tracing it through the coarse fiber tape, I'd have to trace with something like a thicker Sharpie, and I think I'd put a lot more ink on my backing fabric than I wanted. This was my first choice because I could use this super fine pen and not put a lot of ink on this, right? I'm already worried about the letters showing up well because I'm hooking them. It might be in the end that I decide to embroider them, but let's see how it goes. We're evolving this project as we go, so let's see how it goes. I'm going to concentrate and fudge these letters in. as I get started with the hooking. I chose these 3 colors. These are definitely my colors, and they're all bright pinks that I also used for the fairy houses. They are super bright. They're not really showing a difference on camera. But I think what I'm going to do, because I like all 3 and I couldn't choose, I think what I'm going to do is I just cut a little bit of each one, like, I don't know, like less than a yard. And I'm just going to hook until I run out and then switch to a different color, because they're all 3 super bright pinky reds. And if it kind of changes color as it goes, I think that'll make me happy. Again, I've got a super fine hook, right? You could do this with the Joan Moshimer fine hook too. I just stick it in, same rules apply. I'm going to leave the tail up, but you know what? Actually, I'm not going to leave the tail up in this case. Changed my mind. I'm going to leave little loops. Now, this is just plain acrylic wool. I got it from Fancy Store. I got it from Webb's in Northampton. But it's just plain old acrylic wool. It's a little bit nicer than, it's a little bit glossier and more lush than, for example, Lion Brand or something like that, but it's still an acrylic wool. You could really use anything. It might be that I switch to wool or variegated wool. We'll see. I really like the bright color. It might be that if this is too bulky, that I switch to DMC and I take a ride over to Joann's and get some DMC. This reminds me a little bit of knot work, you know, like candle wicking. It's really pretty. It's coming out really pretty. You can see it's very easy to hook into wool. Just have to make sure you have a tiny, fine hook, and you can't be pulling through really bulky pieces without a lot of difficulty. Oh my gosh, it's not even on camera. I'm so sorry. Without a lot of difficulty or risk. I'm going to be careful. You know, it is trickier than using a needle for something like this. Because if I splay the different ply of yarn as I pull it through or right behind, it's not going to look as tidy. And that is one of the risks of hooking, right? Because this is not what hooking was meant for, to be doing this kind of fine text. But the reason I want to do this instead of take out a needle is because I want to show you another technique, because a lot of us are rug hookers. I want to show you another technique that is fantastic. And I don't think enough people are showing us hooking into wool. So it's just an example. If it turns out it's easier, faster, clearer to use a needle, then you should definitely use a needle. I'm going to see if I can make this work. The hooker in me is pretty desperate to make this work. You can see it's so far so good. It's coming out quite pretty. All right, so I am absolutely loving this project. Best top tip I can give you for hooking letters into wool is don't put your loops too close together, right? Think about that candle wicking, right? How they're like a little bit of breathing room apart, because I pulled a couple loops out because they were just, you know, butting up against each other and creating a little confusion. I'm making sure to hook low, and I'm making sure to hook a little ways apart, but I think it's going to be really easy to read the text. I think the text is going to be perfectly legible, even though it's cursive. Of course, if it wasn't cursive, it would be even more immediate, like, you know, reading the passage. But I like the cursive. It's somehow a little bit more magical to me. But you do your project however you want. These are just more techniques. If you're thinking, ooh, you know what, I have a really nice piece of hand-dyed wool that I haven't been able to cut into strips because I like it so much. Ooh, maybe I'll put some text on there, or maybe I'll hook right into it. Yeah, you should. You should. Do you remember in the last issue of Magpie, Nina was hooking into bark cloth, like vintage bark cloth? Same premise, isn't it? Except we're hooking into wool here. If you don't have bark cloth lying around, you probably have wool if you're a hooker. And if you're looking at this video and thinking, oh, wait a minute, she hasn't shown us the finished piece yet, and the video is about to end. Well, that's because you're going to have to wait for Magpie to come out to see the finished piece. And that will be June 16th. So I'm going to continue working on this. This is one of the many projects in Magpie. Lots of people contributing. Beautiful stuff. And I will see you next time on Ribbon Candy Hooking.